One lifestyle change, once a week for 3 weeks in total. In this video today, I will be debunking the myth of speed being 100% genetic and proving that it can in fact be trained. So if you guys did find this content informative, please do consider liking, subscribing and sharing with friends, because you can always cancel a subscription at a later date if you don't enjoy the content. So with that being said, let's get straight into the video. So as mentioned in the introduction there briefly, the first thing I should talk about is genetics versus lifestyle. So when you're looking at what you can do and control in yourself, I am not going to be here to say that 100% of it is in your hands, because it isn't. That's just not true, and I'll be an invalid picture. However, a lot more is in your hands than people believe. For example, if I was to offer you the chance to be given a perfect training program to become the fastest person in the world, you probably wouldn't be.
I can't fucking compete!
Because genetics do play a massive part into it. There's no denying the fact that that is a thing. However, when you're talking about things with something like an Olympic sprinter, I mean the fastest person in the world versus football, it's very different. Because in football, we're not just focused all the time off running in one direction at one point in time. You're always changing direction and shifting and using agility and stuff and so on and so forth. So that's why we train things like plyometrics. However, position dependent, speed is more important than other positions, but I do also feel like in certain situations it is good and you feel better in yourself to have better sprinting. So essentially, the message I put forward is speed is not the most important thing in football, depending on the position. For example, look at Sergio Busquets, one of the best in his position and was not famously fast. However, it is also something you can definitely work on to, do as best you can. If Busquets had the opportunity to make himself faster, and I'm sure he did everything he could to make that happen, or even if he had the technology and so on we had today and he had the opportunity to be faster, I'm sure he would have, and he would have been even better than he was if he wasn't already working on it, which I'm sure he was, because he was a professional athlete. Final thing I want to touch on in this mini sort of disclaimer is the fact that a lot of my knowledge has come from Matt Stigler on YouTube and TikTok, and we will be providing his socials in the description down below, so make sure you guys go and check him out if you haven't already. And he's helping me on my journey on understanding things more than anyone else. Other great examples are people like Coach Christo also, but he's quite well known and mainstream, so I thought I'd give Matt Stigler a little recognition there, because he really does deserve it. So from an outside perspective, what we're going to be working on in this session is acceleration mechanics and how you actually run and the form, as well as training your body to accelerate in certain positions that are hopefully going to be as replicable on the football field as possible. As well as when we get into the plyometric videos on this channel, I will explain right now that these acceleration focused exercises are particularly good for those who are stiffer or more overweight people, because acceleration is something that I struggle with, because at the moment I am slightly overweight for football, which I've already made clear in the introduction video. Make sure you check that out on the channel if you are interested in the channel. And the reason why it's good for us is because, for example, my top speed isn't actually too bad, but I just don't actually look very fast in the football field because it takes me a while to get moving, because I'm so heavy and my body's carrying so much weight. So when I do lose this weight and I become more better in shape, my body will find it even easier than it would if I was to just lose weight by itself. So I'm making myself a much easier job in the long term, and I'm already finding some short-term benefits already. So the first thing we're going to work on is the acceleration and running mechanics, and there are 5 key principles which you need to know. The reason why we do this first and then apply it to sprints later, which I'm going to explain next, is the fact that we can try and teach ourselves this technique and then apply it to the sprints in different positions which are as replicable as possible on the football field. And just to understand, don't feel bad about yourself if you record yourself and see that you just feel in yourself that you're not replicating the mechanics properly when you're undergoing the sprints. It won't come naturally very quickly, but you will, trust me, you'll see progress over time. So don't stress it too much, but try really hard to understand the technique and perfect it as much as possible, and it will come over the weeks. So these 5 key principles which we need to try and perfect as much as possible is correct limb-knee coordination, a 45-degree lean at the torso, correct arm swing, attacking the ground behind you and projecting the shoulders forward. So to work on a 45-degree lean of the torso, attacking the ground behind you, and correct limb-knee coordination, a good exercise to start with is one involving a wall or something to assist you in front of you. Now in the old clip, or the first clip that I'm showing, this is one where I'm from, the first time I tried this new exercise and new workout plan. So because the footage is old, I wasn't, as knowledgeable as what I was doing. It's probably a bit worse. What I'm actually doing is probably not as high quality. And as you can see, I've picked a sort of, bar which is too low down. It's not if you want the bar to be as parallel to your shoulders as possible at a similar height. So when you can lean on it, it feels better, and it's easy to replicate the things like the 45-degree lean of the torso, and it feels more stable. So when we're doing this, you're getting the 45-degree lean of the torso because you need to position yourself where that is possible with your feet and the lean. Attacking the ground behind you when you're doing the stomping movement, that's really working on it. But to take this a step further, what I do is I start with a little warm up, just putting my legs, holding them in a position to be how far I want to bring the knee up, and replicate that of the position my legs will be in when I am accelerating. I then move on to the stomping, and then after that I'll move on to trying to move my legs quickly and exchange them, so that's getting the knee limb coordination. Now when you're doing your sprint and when you analyze it, and you can see even in the footage, which I will show that's new in 3 weeks ago, this is the knee limb coordination is the one that I'm out of the 5, something I still need to work on the most. That's what comes out to me. It might be because I'm quite, tall, got quite longish legs. I'm about 6 foot, so but it's not an excuse. I'm just saying that. And something I need to work on is that when your knees and limbs cross over too high, it indicates more of top speed running mechanics, and you need to not have that in the acceleration phase. They need to be crossing, as your knees and limbs need to essentially be crossing each other as your foot is about to hit the ground. So yeah, that's one I'm working on, but it's, like I say, it's not going to come all at once, but the progress, which I'm going to show in the end, in the conclusion when I'm talking about things, is I'm very happy with it. So we'll get there. So the next exercise we're going to be doing is essentially going to be practicing after the stomp by putting it into practice with swapping the legs over and replicating an acceleration running mechanic. And essentially after that, we're going to progress it onto acceleration switches with hip drive. Essentially, as you notice, as the exercises progress, they get more and more complex and difficult, but you're steady easing yourself into each one. And yeah, it's just trying to get the feel for what it's going to be like to be sprinting when we do actually go and sprint. So after you're working on swapping the feet and, replicating the movement that your legs will make when you are sprinting, I then like to put it into a bit more practice and do really intense, 10 second, 15 second, whatever you want to make it, acceleration practice where you're really focusing on high knees and going as quick as possible. Just to put it into practice essentially before we put it into practice even further later on. So yeah, this one's very good. Like I say, with those high knees, you're driving and using the full ranges of motions, making sure we're working the ankles, knees and the hips, as always. So yes, just putting it into practice a bit more and as I say, maximum intensity. A general thing with speed training or, things like plyometrics is you should be doing things as much as you possibly can to maximum intensity, because when you get to a phase where you're tired, for example, you're not working on plyometrics, or you're not working on speed or agility or to change direction, you're working cardio, which is a separate thing you need to work. So yeah, that's basically what you got to make aware of, that you're training at maximum intensity so you can get the best results as possible. So for the other 2 principles, we need to practice the arm swing and the shoulders being projected forward. So in order to do this, we're going to do a half kneeling bound. Now this will also help with the 45-degree lean of the torso, but the main goal is that we cover all 5, but the 45-degree lean of the torso is also provided in this exercise, because you're exploding out of the position and projecting the shoulders forward and swinging your arms in the correct path, and make sure you replicate the position at the start and then change it into the position at the end, of course, for when you are going to explode off later if you were to do an actual sprint. So these are getting done first. Now in terms of rep ranges and sets for all these exercises, I'd like to promote freedom with what you do for this, because it's more about, like I said, remember, about making sure you can recover enough and you are got enough time to have a proper go with maximum intensity, something you can progressively overload. So yeah, I'm personally, for most of these exercises, about 8 reps, and some of them maybe 2 sets, but it's a pretty, I don't think it's too much of a concern. I think the main thing, especially as you start doing it, is to try and get down the patterns and just get your body familiar with working like this if you don't do such exercises like this, because it won't be used to it. And yeah, that's a real key detail. So now that we've been working on the technique, we're going to try and apply it into sprinting. So the first sort of sprint exercise is going to be 2, is a full kneeling start, and this is going to essentially help put your all these mechanics into play as much as you possibly can, and are just really useful for applying everything you've just done prior. So you're going to be trying to put it all into play, all the 5 details and the 5 points, sorry. And what you're going to then need to do is really be working on putting your knees, ankles and hip in full ranges of motions when you're in this position in the full kneeling start. It's not an easy position. It's one you need to explode out of, a bit like what we've been practicing with the half kneeling bound. It's more such, I know it is a sprinting position, and it's not one that's always going to be even replicated on the football field, which is why our second exercise coming up is going to help with that. But it's essentially going to be putting you in a position where you need to explode out of. And I think for me, it's only about 3 steps you take, because it's about the first acceleration phase. So the real important thing is just, being able to get yourself into the position. The first step in my eyes is one of the most important ones, because what I'll see is when I'm looking back on this footage, even 3 weeks later, so not the old footage, but the recent footage, is that my first step is improved a lot. I do see that I'm, sort of probably going into top speed a bit too quick. I need to have a longer acceleration phase. That's something I'm going to work on going forward. But the thing I'm really proud of is the fact that it's coming out of that position first, because that's, what's improving that sort of, it's not reaction time, but just making you more sharp. And that's what I really want, really important to me, being a larger athlete. So, yeah. Can't even say athlete, that's not the correct word to describe myself.
Hey, you're not that guy, pal, trust me. You're not that guy.
You know what I mean? Being a larger football player. So, we've got that one down, and now the next exercise is going to be a lunge into a sprint, a half lunge into sprint. So what you're going to be doing here is you're really working on redirecting force, which is massively important in football, and this is a term that was always used in plyometrics. So the reason we're redirecting the force is because, how many times are you going to find yourself on the football field in a hard start sprint exercise? Like, when do you just always run in one direction? It doesn't happen. That's not to discredit the exercise, because it's still very important to get the mechanics down, but to then try and put it into a position where you feel a bit more awkward. This lunge into sprint is really great. That's everything. That's the routine I have at the moment for acceleration mechanics, and working on acceleration to improve on. So to conclude, for everything that we've done already within 3 weeks, I'm massively proud. I'm bearing in mind that the second week was after the Euros final, which was not a fun time for fellow Englishmen. I was a bit hungover, so it was not a great session, and that week, was pretty poor, to be honest. I had just finished the third week a couple of days ago, and finished much better than that week. So bearing everything in mind, within 3 weeks, I'm really happy with the progress. I feel better in myself. That's the most important thing. Like, I feel better actually sprinting. When it felt like doing the first exercises and stuff, it felt like I was, teaching myself to do something completely new, which I was.
Cheers, Jeff.
But the point is, it's coming more naturally, and I can only see it getting better from here on out. So I would massively recommend this whole thing about, teaching you how to, get faster is definitely real. It does exist. It's a myth that it can't be trained. I'm very confident of that. And we'll keep updating on the channel, keep going. But I'm massively looking forward to seeing how this goes from here on out. And I hope that I've given you guys some really helpful content to base your knowledge off of and help improve your routine. You don't have to copy this word by word, but if you have other sort of, exercises that perform a similar function, you can be like, yes, I'm covering that, and yes, I'm covering that. And if you don't, then you can be like, I might include this, or I might alter my thing such as this way. But if you guys did enjoy, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with any friends that you think might find this content useful. And I will see you guys in the next one.